Of course, any rise in cases is of concern because it usually means that we're not adhering to what works to keep the curve flattened or decrease the number of cases. So it is a concern, especially as we're about to disperse and go off for the Thanksgiving and the rest of the holidays. It's a concern. So let's start with 10. 10 days is the number of days that you would need to isolate. So if you were to get infected with COVID today, that takes you all the way to Thanksgiving Day. So you really don't need to be at the Thanksgiving meal. Your day of coming out of isolation would be the Friday after Thanksgiving. So 10 days. 7 is an important number because what we've learned about the biology of this virus is that most people are contagious right up to the 7th day post-infection. So 7 days is the next cutoff. 5, because 5 days is on average when people start having symptoms. And typically it's also the time when people are pretty contagious because they are shedding virus, they're usually coughing, and the 24 hours before that is a big opportunity to spread the virus. 3, because most people don't show any sort of symptoms prior to the 3rd day, which generally means they don't have a very high viral count yet, so they're not as contagious for those first 3 days. So 3, 5, 7, and 10. The first and most important point I need people to understand: testing is not a substitute for wearing a mask, physically distancing, sanitizing your hands, and keeping the size of your group interactions to a minimum. So that's the first thing. What you should be doing, you really need to take an idea of what you have been doing and what you're about to do before you go home. If you know that you've been, again, taking part in large parties, groups, or socials, then you need to think carefully about what your first few days at home are going to look like. I encourage you, if you've been doing that and you're not planning to get tested, then you need to be wearing masks consistently for the first few days because you would still be within a quarantine period if you just recently did these activities. As we've seen, post-Halloween, we are seeing the number of cases increase, and it's all related to Halloween parties and activities related to around that time, election and Halloween. And so now we're past that point, you're about to go home, you need to take this seriously because you're gonna have vulnerable family members that you need to protect. What families need to be doing, you need to take an initial approach that everybody that's coming to visit outside your core family household are potentially infected. So to the extent that you can make some effort to have people wear masks, except when it's absolutely necessary, like when it's time to eat or drink, move, if possible, activities to outdoors, limit the physical closeness of the contact, and then again, sanitizing hands, cleaning the frequently touched surfaces. Here we have a second vaccine candidate that shows greater than a 90% effectiveness rate. And very important with Moderna is that this vaccine was part of Operation Warp Speed, which it was, again, supported by the government. So there will be more millions of doses available early on that could be administered to various groups in the population. In addition to that, the Moderna vaccine does not require the ultra cold storage like the Pfizer vaccine needs to be. So this should be easier to transport, easier to move around so that you could distribute, and hopefully easy to administer. So between these two vaccines, we are hoping to have doses available, once they get through the FDA licensing in the first quarter, so the first 3 months of 2021.